If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.
Regulating and potentially expanding gambling is expected to be a major issue when lawmakers return to the state capitol for the 2020 legislative session. And a person at the center of this intense policy debate is State Representative Dan Shaul. The Imperial Republican joins us on the latest edition of Politically Speaking to talk about the ins and outs of gambling in Missouri. Let's hit the music.
This is the Politically Speaking podcast, the definitive show about Missouri politics.
It's a little complicated in Bolivar because there is a Parsons family there.
But we also knew that it was important to make sure that we got to where we needed to go.
You know, if you walk in a room and you're getting ready to make a decision and everybody in the room looks like you need to stop.
And right now what happens in the United States Senate is as critical as anywhere else in the country.
I really want the state to succeed.
Well, we want everybody to know that we're all working together.
I just worked hard to try to build my name where I didn't have the money.
Welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm your host, Julie O'Donoghue, and I'm here with my co-host,
Jason Rosenbaum.
And we are here with Representative Dan Shaul of Jefferson County. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
Of the beautiful 113th House District, correct?
Yep. It's basically if you're going down 55 from the Merrimack all the way down to Highway M, both sides of the highway, it's basically the gateway to Jefferson County.
Representative Shaul, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how you got interested in politics?
Well, I grew up in South County, and everybody from St. Louis wants to know what high school. I went to Lindbergh High School, went into service, served in the United States Air Force, and then I came back, went to Parks College, got an aviation degree, worked aviation. Decided that wasn't necessarily for me, went into tool sales with Snap-on Tools, and then got into work for my dad in the Grocers Association, and have been in the Grocers Association since then.
Have you served in any other elected office?
Yeah, I currently serve on the Windsor C1 School Board, and I have for a number of years. I've also served as a council president for church, which is a tough position because you're dealing with people's faith, and it's ultimately the most personable position I think someone could serve.
You were part of the 2014 red wave, so to speak, where Republicans gained a lot of ground in Jefferson County. What prompted you to get into this wacky world of Missouri politics?
Well, at the time I was on the school board, and I still am on the school board, and it just seemed like a good opportunity for me to serve in the school board, or serve in the General Assembly. It was an open seat, and it just seemed like the right time for me and my family to go ahead and do that.
What was that 2014 election cycle like? You know, from watching it from afar, you know, Republicans did very well that cycle, but I'm sure there was a lot of work that went into turning a traditionally Democratic county like Jefferson County red. How did that happen?
Really, I think all the candidates that won in Jefferson County that year worked their tails off, door to door, shaking hands, talking to people, becoming visible, and I think that's the key to any election, really. State House, I believe, is probably the last step in any elected official where you can still meet most of your constituents and still have a relationship with them. Once you get to the state senate, the numbers start getting so big, but at the state house level, you can still get to see a majority of your constituents go into the subdivisions, knock door to door, have events that they're able to come to. I mean, we even had a doggy snow cone day where dogs could come and have snow cones.
That's amazing. Come do that event near my house.
Well, come to the 113th and you'll see it again this summer.
Do dogs like snow cones?
If you put chicken broth on them.
Okay.
And one of our local companies with the snow cone company actually did that for us. They came up with the idea.
Recently, you were the head of the Interim Gambling Committee in the House that was looking at gambling issues ahead of the 2020 session. I think everyone expects sports betting to come up. There's issues with what are called gray machines and whether they're gambling devices or not that are popping up in gas stations and truck stops and, veterans' homes and places like that. So I guess I wanted to ask, how did you get to be the head of the committee?
Well, last year there was the speaker came to me and asked me if I'd carry a bill on VLTs. It went through Budget Committee, and we got it out of Budget Committee, although barely, but we got it out of Budget Committee.
And VLTs are video lottery terminals.
Right. And the issue at hand, to give the listeners a little background, currently in the state of Missouri, there's between 10 to 14,000 of these machines, gray machines, that may or may not be legal. It's going through the legal process on the other side of the state, and we hope to have some initial remedy, first quarter of next year. But for it totally play out in the courts, we're probably looking at 21 or 22 for final judgment from the Supreme Court on it. And you'd use the word veterans homes. It's really fraternal organizations have had these machines in their establishments for years.
Right. I apologize. Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Like American Legions.
Elks
Lodges.
Yeah, your fraternals. So, and they've been allowed to operate there for years. And that's how a lot of these fraternals pay the bills and contribute the large sums of money they do to the local community through charity. So there's that segment. Then there's the segment that we're starting to see more visibly outside of the fraternals in the truck stops and the convenience stores, basically all over the state, 10 to 14,000 of these machines. Now, are they legal or not? That's the great debate. And we didn't answer that question in our committee. What we did was we wanted to find out what's going on in the gaming industry, both in the VLT or the gray machine area, but also sports betting. They've both been very highly energized discussions the last couple of years in the General Assembly. So the Speaker asked that we go ahead and look at that going into the next year.
The gray machines you're talking about that are in the truck stops, do they transmit taxes to the state that other gambling devices pay taxes for?
The current machines in the truck stops in any of these facilities do not contribute to the tax revenue of the state of Missouri in any way.
Is there any estimate on how much money the state is missing out on because those gray machines are not paying taxes?
There's been the lottery reported to the committee that they've lost $50 million this year, and they believe it to be to those. So if you look at that, that's a substantial amount. Also, during our testimony, that if we were to legalize this, that if we were able to convert the gray machines to a VLT style machine, that we could somewhere between in year 4 or 5 of the rollout, several $100 million.
I just want to explain for listeners if you haven't seen these machines. They are actually literally gray. Okay, they look to me they look like a lottery machine or a
they look like
maybe
a video poker machine
right,
is the easiest
correct.
way to describe
yes,
it.
yeah.
And we use the term gray because they're not legal
right.
and they're not illegal.
Right.
So we just use the term gray. And the one sidebar, the funny thing on our report, one of the biggest contentions at the end when we got the report done was how we spell gray, Gray or Grey.
Yeah.
And when you put let's say you put $2 in this machine and you win, you get money back, right?
In most of them, you would have the opportunity to get money back, yes.
Slot machines in a casino, in addition to generating money, they are regulated so that they're supposed to operate in a certain way so that people actually do win, some money. Some of the concern about the gray machines is maybe these machines aren't operating in a way that's quote unquote fair.
Right. And there's one by my house that says all $500 payouts be paid out the next morning. And it's a handwritten note on the machine. So, I mean, is that what do you take from that? Is that, I mean, does anybody ever really win the 500 or maybe next week to increase sales, they put all $1,000 payouts to be paid out the next day?
I think this is an interesting issue that we're seeing across other types of industries too. So I kind of think the gray machines are a little bit like the scooters. Like there is no regulation of them because a company found a way to get into a market where there isn't an existing regulation. Maybe. I guess that's the debate about whether they're legal or not.
Well, that and what we learned during the committee was that both from the Missouri Highway Patrol and from the prosecuting attorneys from the association is that they don't necessarily have the time or the manpower to go out and oversee this as it stands now. One, what do you want them doing? Do you want them going in and investigating a fraternal organization, your VFWs? Or do you want them going out and investigating the arson or the murder that happened?
Right, because the state police in testimony said that they are pulling people off other things to help investigate these gray machines when people report them as being an illegal machine, again, whether they are or not, in their, gas station.
Now, I imagine that since these machines, again, are not paying taxes and are not being regulated like other machines, the companies behind them have probably hired a bunch of people to make sure it stays that way. I want to ask you, what has been the political pressure for someone like you to basically leave the status quo on these machines?
There has been pressure on all sides on this one. I knew when the speaker and I spoke about me chairing this that it was going to be a interesting journey, let's put it that way. It certainly has been. There's been players on both sides of the argument, the casinos, the gray, the VLT side, all of these people, and then sports betting as well. They have all come and they all have very compelling arguments on why their side is right. It's been quite intense, to be honest with you. Our report was not met with a lot of praise from either side because we didn't tell them how to fix this. It was more of an educational report and a status report, and they were very disappointed because they all expected us to take what they've come in and told us they wanted. Ours was a status report because I thought that's what we needed to do, and the committee thought it was best to put a status report on where we were in gaming in Missouri rather than try to tell the legislature how to fix it going forward.
Now, I want to go step by step of those various interests. What did the casinos want your committee to recommend in particular?
They wanted all these gray machines to be made illegal and remove them completely from anywhere other than a casino.
What did the gray machine aligned companies want?
The machines the companies that either sell or service them want to make sure that they believe that they're operating in a legal market, and they're operating within the law. They want to make sure that whatever we do, that they're allowed to continue to operate, and that a lot of them are small family businesses across the state. They want to make sure that they have an opportunity to play in whatever is created if we create something so that they can maintain their support of their communities.
And finally, what does the Missouri Lottery want and VLT aligned machines want?
Right. So then there's the lottery who will do whatever we want. They just want to be able to continue to contribute at high levels to education in Missouri funding. And I think it's a concern of theirs that they've seen their revenue drop because of this activity. So they'd like to be part of the solution, whatever that solution is. They didn't advocate that they be in charge or not. They are capable, if we were to do something, that they would be able to oversee that system. And the VLTs would be more of it's not a generic term. We use it as the group that wants to make sure that all the machines are interconnected through a centralized database like they've done in Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Georgia. Those machines are all interconnected and overseen and regulated and taxed appropriately from the state level rather than just from operators turning in their tally sheets.
You had Democrats and Republicans on your committee. They seem to be a little bit all over the place. So can you give us a rundown of how people feel about gray machines?
Yeah, our committee was very diverse. It was from all over the state. We had Representative Bosley from here in St. Louis, and we had Democrat Wes Rogers from Kansas City as our Democrats on there. And the thing I was proud about is our report was a bipartisan report. Everyone signed on to the report. And our biggest confrontation was how to spell gray, which I think, and we gave, I ran as a nonpartisan committee, and Representative Rogers has thanked me for allowing him. Several times I let him have a lot of leeway in his questioning. But it wasn't a partisan issue, and I agree with you. It's more of a regional issue, and I would almost, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I think a lot of it has to do with possibly faith decisions, biblical, where you stand religiously on gaming, and I think that's really where it came. But sports betting was a whole different animal than the slots.
We're going to talk about sports betting after we take a short break and hear from our sponsor.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.
And we're back with Representative Dan Shaul. We're going to move on and talk about sports betting. So I think this is probably something that the general public cares about a lot more than gray machines. Is there a will to do something that legalizes sports betting in some fashion?
I think so. There's some agreement between the casinos on how it might work. We had in our committee, we had most of the Major League Sports teams or the sports leagues come in and talk to us about their concerns and what they want. And I think they're all manageable requests or things that they think would make it better. The one for Major League Baseball that I found most interesting was the use of official data. Currently now in Missouri, if you want to do sports betting, you're going to go offshore and use some type of non-regulated,
like app on your phone, basically.
Right, but it's going to be something done outside of the United States.
Now, there are some older, I'm going to stereotype and say gentlemen, who might still use a bookie. But yes, I think you're correct.
Exactly, and so that would be your bookie or going offshore on your phone or whatever it's unregulated. And if you're going to bet on one of everybody, I think a lot of people still bet on the people to win or lose the game. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of side bets on who's going to hit the next 400-foot home run, or who's going to pitch the next no-hitter, or who's going to score 13-run pools, those type of things. On the 400-foot home run, who's measuring that 400-foot home run? Is it the bookie? Is it the guy in Tijuana that's measuring that? Or is it Major League Baseball data? Major League Baseball was very insistent that it should be done through some type of regulated data source, and they would recommend themselves.
So you mentioned the casinos. Is one of the conflicts with legalizing sports betting about where it would happen, whether it would have to happen like at casinos or whether it would be allowed like on a phone app? Because I imagine that for a lot of people that want to do sports betting, they would rather do it from the comfort of their couch rather than have to go to a casino that may not be close to them.
Yes, and the question is, do we allow it in casinos, and do we allow it to be done over the internet on your phone? And we saw some great examples of success on both of those. Some of the states that have legalized gaming have made sure that the internet betting is tied to a casino in some fashion. One of the concerns also with being able to do it on your phone is there's certain areas in the state you shouldn't be able to do it. Should you be able to sit behind home plate and wager bets from there? It's a great question. Should the teams that have invested in their infrastructure around the ballparks or rinks or whatever, should they have some type of say on who the sports betting is done by in those areas? Some great conversations. Major League Football or National Football League Players Association came in and was concerned about real-time biometric data being used to influence sports betting.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. I wanted to get to that. I thought some of the most interesting testimony came from the Players Association. So I think that someone from the NFL and the NHL came. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The NFL, they talked about, the Players Association from National Football League talked about biometric data being used in real time. Apparently, there's equipment that they can measure heart rates and different physical conditions of these players while they're playing.
Right.
And if you're going to bet on the football kicker, the place kicker, and you see his heart rate's up on the sidelines, and that's indicative of him missing a field goal, that might influence your bet.
Right.
And so they were concerned about the security of that type of information and how it could be regulated.
Right.
And so those are interesting concerns that I never really thought of. What we also learned was on the app side of the sports betting is geofencing, learned some of the rules and abilities to geofence so that in St. Louis here, once you got to the middle of the Poplar Street Bridge, you couldn't place a bet if you were headed to Illinois. And vice versa. So it was really a good technology session for us learning about that. Then there's also software out there to make sure that you're the one placing the bet and that you're of the right age. It's Know Your Customer software, where you actually scan the front and back of your driver's license and take a selfie of yourself. And those three things are compared to make sure, one, that it is a valid ID and that you are the one on the ID.
I wanted to go back to something that the Players Associations brought up. So the other thing they brought up is concerns that people will be approaching players, basically asking them to throw a play or throw a game because they have a lot of money riding on whatever decision that is. Or even, I gather, people who might come up to them and like assault them because they lost a lot of money on a decision. Do you think that that's something that the General Assembly has to address if they're going to legalize sports betting? Some sort of, I guess, protection for the players or some.
Yeah, the conversation you're referring to that took place was player may get called or show up with a bundle of money on his doorstep, one way or the other, to try to influence them. What does the player do in that situation? Who does he turn to? Who does he ask for help so that he's not the one in trouble? But also, how do we protect those players from that type of activity? And it's something that we have to be prepared for and make sure that the laws beyond sports betting take into account that those type of activities could occur and that there's not a loophole in the law to threaten a professional athlete with harm due to the outcome of a game.
Has there been any discussion? So there's also a proposal to allow collegiate athletes to start earning money from, at least one of the people who's introduced it is going to introduce it is Wes Rogers. Has there been any talk about college players in particular, and also like this other proposal maybe to allow them to generate money and how that might interact with sports betting?
It was discussed. I think it'll be more talked about during the actual discussion of the bills. What we tried to do in this committee was make sure that we understand where we were at and what hurdles we may have going forward. We didn't get into specifics like that, but I think that is something that you probably want to watch this year. The NCAA isn't in real good favor with many members of the legislature for their actions that they've taken in their, how can I say this?
The fact that they made it so Mizzou couldn't go to a bowl game and lost scholarships because I guess a tutor helped a bunch of players. But frankly, Mizzou was bad this year, so it's like...
I don't think they were going to a bowl game to begin with.
It's not much of a loss.
Right.
I do kind of want to shift to another topic and talk about something that your Jefferson County colleague Rob Vescovo tweeted out recently. Rob Vescovo is the House Majority Leader, and he is going to be the Speaker of the House in 2021. He was responding to this increasing talk about gun control and gun restrictions that have been talked about not only by mayors in St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, but also Governor Parson. I'm going to read part of this statement. While we have seen talk recently about gun-grabbing laws and red flag laws as a way to curb violent crime, my office as Majority Leader and many of my Republican colleagues remain committed to protecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Missouri citizens. As a legislative body, we have advocated for policies that are tough and smart on crime without infringing on the constitutionally protected right of lawful Missourians to bear arms. During the 2020 session, we will again look for solutions to keep guns out of the hands of criminals while also protecting gun ownership rights for the good people of Missouri. Missouri already has existing laws that extensively and vigorously work to get stolen guns and criminals with guns off our streets. However, if the heavy penalties that already exist for crimes such as murder and assault don't effectively deter criminals from committing these acts, how will any new laws produce better results, especially if they're little more than window dressing? I know that was a long quote, and there's actually more of that we'll post in our post, but I wanted to make sure it's in context. That doesn't make it seem like any major gun control laws are going to pass in the Missouri House. Is that fair to say?
Well, I want to say some people on the other side from Representative Vescovo on this issue think the restrictions, particularly the ones that Parson said he might get behind, are not major. They think that those are pretty modest. But any gun restrictions sounds like they're not going anywhere.
I think our focus should be on enforcing the laws that we have, making sure that the prosecutors prosecute the laws that we have. We need to support our law enforcement more than we have. But I think his release is spot on. We have a lot of issues out there. I think the first step is use the tools that we currently have. If there is a situation, I'm sure it'll be discussed in the Capitol and met with open minds. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily see the General Assembly as a whole passing much gun regulation at all this year.
So I haven't really heard a lot of evidence that say the uptick in violent crime and shootings in St. Louis is caused by people that legally purchase guns. It would stand to reason that many of them are probably not legally able to own guns in the first place. But I guess my follow-up question to that is, let's say there's a proposal to make background checks more robust, and the background check takes 2 or 3 minutes out of a gun buyer's time. Is that really an infringement on the Second Amendment, especially if it may provide some assurance that a gun isn't being sold to someone who has a felony on their record who isn't allowed to own a gun in the first place?
Well, I think the current checks do now ensure that felons aren't able to legally obtain a gun. The felon also understands that he cannot legally or she cannot legally obtain a gun. I think it goes back to your first thing, that these crimes are not being committed by law-abiding citizens, and I don't think that check is going to make a difference to them obtaining a gun or not. I think we just saw in Jefferson County a spree of car break-ins. People need to remember to lock their car, and don't leave your firearm in your car. Those are the simple things that I think we can do as citizens without us doing anything in the General Assembly. I think we as citizens have to take responsibility for the guns that we have and make sure they don't fall into the hands of the people that shouldn't have them. I think we need to take responsibility. The firearms I own are double locked in a safe, both trigger locks and also in a safe. Some other people may have them a little bit more readily available, but make sure you take care of them. And I think if we do that, we're not going to get the guns out of the bad guy's hand by passing legislation. What we need to do is give the law enforcement and the prosecutors the tools they need to make sure that there's a penalty for committing these acts with these guns.
Governor Parson and the mayors of Kansas City, St. Louis, Columbia, Springfield, I think I got them all.
Those are the big four.
They had their press conference at this point, I feel like a few weeks ago, where they talked about the things that they thought should be done to help address gun violence. And then there seemed to be a lot of grumbling, like maybe behind the scenes. And then we get the statement from Vescovo, I want to say like a few weeks later. Do you think it was necessary for him to make a statement? And why is he the first person we're kind of hearing from in the General Assembly in a official capacity saying we're not interested in doing any sort of gun restriction?
Right. And if on a lot of the Facebook and social media accounts of several representatives, they've already come out with a less official statement. Representative Vescovo has been a leader since he stepped in that Capitol. We'll have another great year on the floor because of him, and I look forward to serving my last 2 years in the House with him as Speaker. And he has taken it upon himself to be our leader, and we have allowed him to do that as well. And I thought it was very good leadership from him to make that statement. I think it's very probably spot on as far as how most of the people in the caucus feel, that let's enforce the laws we have. Let's use the tools that we have, give more tools to the prosecutors and law enforcement so they can do their jobs and ensure they are doing their jobs. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah,
or not.
no, it does. I guess I was, I think you're right. There's been a lot of grumbling and individual statements from individual lawmakers.
I wouldn't call it grumbling, just people.
Yeah.
And we are going into an election year.
There did seem to be some people were not happy with the governor.
Well, and I think that's going to happen anytime. I mean, regardless of who the governor is, they're going to have differences of opinions times, and sometimes, that's the way it's supposed to be. But we still get along even though we disagree. We're not like the Beltway where once you have a difference, it stays that way. We can have difference of opinion and still get things done in Jefferson City.
From looking at our coverage of this, what the governor and the mayors were talking about was passing a state law aimed at keeping handguns out of the hands of minors and violent offenders and domestic abusers. On its surface, that doesn't seem super radical. This is not like the Beto O'Rourke plan of going in and confiscating or buying out AR-15s. Why should there be
or implementing a wait period to get your gun
or something like that? Yeah. Why should there be angst of these proposals or the governor for saying that these are maybe ideas worth considering?
Well, I think what the governor may have been saying, and I don't want to speak for him, but a lot of those things that you're talking about are already in state statute. They just need to be enforced by the prosecutors and give law enforcement the opportunity to and the tools so they can enforce these type of laws. I think we need to make sure we enforce what's on the books, and I think if you're convicted of felony abuse or felony assault, you're a felon. You don't have the right to own a gun or purchase a gun or possess a gun. So let's use those tools that are there. Instead of wasting our time on a bill that is just going to be there for fluff, let's give the law enforcement and prosecutors the tools they need to be successful to take care of this.
Before we leave this topic, I think we should mention that after that press conference where Governor Parson was with the mayors, he then sent out a blast, I guess reassuring all of us that he is a supporter of the Second Amendment and gun rights. He sent out a clip of a radio interview he did, so which signaled to me, beyond the what I'll still call grumbling we saw on Facebook and social media, that he had heard from some people that they were not very happy with him.
I will tell you that I've never known the governor not to be a supporter of the Second Amendment. I think he, coming from a law enforcement background himself, I think he understands that law enforcement needs more tools to enforce what they have. And what's more disheartening to a law enforcement officer is to put a case before a prosecutor and a prosecutor decide that, well, because it's you, I'm not going to file a claim or file a case or charges, or because I don't want to prosecute that crime. It's not their choice. And I think that's what we need to really focus on, is allowing ensuring the prosecutors prosecute what they need to.
We do a segment where we ask elected officials to plug something in their district that they think people should come see.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jefferson County is, I think, a thriving community. And in my district alone, we have two of the best school districts in Jefferson County, Windsor C1 and Fox C6. Great school districts. Both of them invest highly in the classroom. Windsor has made a very concerted effort to take care of the special needs children to a level that has increased the desire to live in that district for that. Fox has a great educational program as well. So if you're looking for a good home with a good education and good representation from the state level, I'd recommend coming to 113th.
You can find all of my stories and Jason's stories at stlpublicradio.org. Jason, where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
You can follow me at J Rosenbaum on Twitter.
And you can follow me at JS O'Donohue on Twitter. And Representative Shaul, where can people find you? Do you have a website, Facebook page, Twitter?
Basically, the best way, I'm a little old-fashioned. We do have a Facebook page. I'd welcome you to come find us there. But the main thing is I like talking face-to-face. If a constituent has a concern, whether they live in my district or not, I'm always willing to talk and meet and figure out how best we can serve each other.
A novel concept. I think that's great.
Well, thank you.
Come back and listen to us again.